Good morning and welcome back to Instagram Live with Intimate Rose. It is me, Dr. Amanda, and today I will be joined by Andrea Martin, and our topic this morning is going to be hormone therapy, specifically on progesterone and some of the side effects, why it's prescribed, your provider can make for you, and some lifestyle changes that you can do to help accommodate these new changes as you're going through hormone therapy. So, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Just lovely. Don't mind my wood behind me. Eventually, I'm making this pretty behind here, so now it's just chunks of wood.
I think it's beautiful chunks of wood. I cannot wait to see what you put back there.
Very artistic.
Something interesting. My desk is behind me, and I was helping my little guy with math the other day, and usually I have all of my Intimate Rose tools on my desk, like surrounding me as I'm working. And I did him the favor of taking them down before we were working on math. And then after we concluded our math session, I noticed that I failed to remove the purple clitoris that was sitting on my desk. I have no idea.
I see it back there.
Yeah.
He's probably so used to all of that and so well educated and just like, clitoris, what are you gonna do?
Even if the dilates were out, he wouldn't have batted an eye. As long as he's been alive, there's been Intimate Rose. Intimate Rose came before he was alive, so he's used to seeing bright colored things everywhere, but
I love that for him.
I do too. So someday in the future, in some anatomy book, it will re-register. So
it's like, oh God, my mom.
You're welcome. So it's time for Andy and Mandy, and our hormone menopause topic for today is specifically on progesterone. We're going to talk about what is progesterone as a hormone, what happens during perimenopause and menopause that allows for the body to readjust when hormone therapy is brought on board, and then specifically if people are having side effects from it, what can be done to help them.
Yes, let's talk about it all.
Let's do it.
I always like to start off by defining what is a hormone. A few months ago, I was listening to a podcast by Kelly Casperson, and she has a great podcast, You Are Not Broken, and she's a very smart doctor. And this whole podcast, I don't know, they were talking about hormones and peptides, and at one point she goes, what the F is a hormone? It's like one of the things where it's like, we know it and we learned it, and you just like talk about it, and then if someone's like, now define it for me, you're like, But I mean, they're basically these little like chemical messengers that travel through our body and kind of tell it, what to do, when to do it. Do you watch? It's a very specific reference. Do you watch The Silo at all? It's on Apple TV.
No, I have not seen that specific one, but I do have Apple TV.
It was aggressively marketed to me, and I had big plans to not like it just because of that, and then I liked it. But anyway, there's these people that have to travel all the time between levels and deliver messages, and I'm always like, they're the hormones. They're always running up and down the stairs with messages. So, and progesterone is just a hormone. So it's a specific type of messenger. It's actually made from cholesterol, and it has quite a few functions within our body, but I think the most important ones, or the ones that we're most aware of, are its relationship to menstrual cycles, and then of course to promoting and maintaining a pregnancy. So but then when it comes to menopause, we kind of have different roles and different importance of hormones. So the big player is always estrogen. We always talk about all the things that estrogen could do because it's wonderful, and helping our bones and our hearts and stopping hot flashes and all those things. But the big thing, if you are going through menopause and you want to take hormone therapy, especially estrogen, and you have a uterus, you have to take some type of progesterone, because estrogen will stimulate the lining of the uterus to grow, but we don't want that to happen after menopause. We want to keep it nice and thin to prevent any hyperplasia or potential cancers. So that's kind of, I mean, progesterone has lots of roles, but that's like, it's a really, really important one when it comes to menopause. So I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to interject with, but I was going to just kind of go and we could talk about what happens when your body doesn't like progesterone.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that I would just add is the commonly referred term as opposing. So it's almost like progesterone or progestin keeps estrogen in check during hormone therapy to ensure that it doesn't, as you said, result in that thickening of the lining of the uterus. So we think of it almost as like as a chaperone.
Yes.
Making sure that estrogen doesn't get out of line.
I love it. I love it. It's like the olden days and a couple would go on a date, but they weren't allowed to be unaccompanied. Progesterone's there to make sure we don't get out of control.
It's the adult.
It is. That's so true. But it creates a big conundrum when your body does not like progesterone. So there's something called progesterone. It can be sensitivity or an intolerance. I found different kind of statistics. I would say I'm finding now between 10 and 20% of people actually have some type of intolerance or sensitivity. I think the more we become aware of it, those numbers are going up because it used to be like 1 in 1,000. And basically, these symptoms that you can have when you're exposed to progesterone, your body doesn't like it. So a lot of mood stuff. So feeling irritable, anxious. I mean, I've had people so bad as to have like suicidal ideations, feeling really restless, panic attacks. I had a patient that started progesterone runs and she was like, it's like my emotions are just super heightened. I feel like I don't have control over them. I can feel myself and I notice myself kind of reacting to people inappropriately, for something that doesn't really match the situation that's going on. Sometimes people can feel really down, and obviously that's no way to live. So the mood symptoms can be very intense for some. There's also more, I guess, physical symptoms like bloating is common, cramping. Some people can get acne, headaches, breast tenderness or nipple tenderness. I would say in general, the physical symptoms tend to be a bit more tolerable or more, if we kind of wait it out, they'll tend to even out and go away. Not for everybody, but usually the mood ones, I mean, you can't necessarily just, push through some of that. And some of the clues people might wonder, like, how the heck do I know if I'm, insensitive to progesterone or what's going to happen? So think about if when you were cycling or if you still are, did you have like PMS or especially PMDD? So when you look at the menstrual cycle, the second half is called the luteal phase. And around day 21 is when progesterone really spikes. So this is all like leading up towards your period. And if you are someone that feels like absolute crap during that time, like you're angry, you're irritable, you're sad, you're moody, all those things, you might be somebody that has progesterone intolerance. So sometimes we can use that as a clue, like, okay, this person felt that way when they were cycling regularly. We might run into this when we try to add in progesterone or progestin with their hormone therapy. Some people also, kind of a clue, but it can be a little trickier to suss out, is like if you've taken certain types of like birth control pills that had progestin in it, and you recall that, you had big mood symptoms, didn't, feel very good on them. But I will say with those, there is a difference between, hormone therapy and birth control pills. So sometimes somebody hates birth control pills, but then they take hormone therapy and they're like, oh, this is fine. I feel much better on this. So if you're kind of like not sure and you're trying to figure out like, oh, am I feeling better on this? Am I feeling worse? We could do like take your progesterone for just 12 days of the month and like do a diary, kind of compare how you're feeling. And if you're like, oh yeah, all those mood symptoms are really in that 12-day period, then that's a good clue that maybe your body just doesn't like progesterone. So it's silly though. You would think like, oh, it's a hormone and my body makes it, so naturally she must like it. But some bodies are just like, no, no, I do not approve. We don't mesh well.
So with the emotional, you mentioned that with some of the physical, like the bloating and that's the digestive symptoms that oftentimes people are able to push through, but with the emotional ones, we want to make sure that they have a different method of management. What are some of the ways that you would manage that 10 to 20% that are not they're not feeling like themselves?
And can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, because it just popped up on my computer that it switched my AirPods there and I got nervous. Like, no, no. So there's actually a lot of options for playing around with this to figure. So, well, one, if you don't have a uterus, this isn't a problem because we don't have to use progesterone. It's an option. So that's the easiest solution. But obviously, most people are walking around with uteruses. Um, so looking at different types of progesterone. So progesterone is like bioidentical. It's like the same molecule that your body makes. That's the one that usually for most people makes them like relaxed and sleep nice. You can try doing the bioidentical version. I've had some people where for whatever reason, if we get it compounded into like an extended release or sustained release, that just makes a huge difference for them and they're able to tolerate it. You can do, I mean, this requires monitoring, but if your symptoms aren't like that terrible, you can kind of compound and start at like a lower dose than we would like, but like gradually work your way up to see if you can get to a tolerable dose. But again, I have people, especially like those PMDD people, where they're like, nope, do not like progesterone, do not like the bioidentical stuff. And then in which case we try to play around with some of the synthetic progestins. Sometimes progestin only IUDs can work nicely, like the Mirena. Again, I've also had people that they're like, nope, body doesn't like that either. There's a lot of progestin only pills and even patches that have synthetic progestin. It's a little bit of playing around and just kind of seeing what your body likes. There's one progesterone I like in particular called drospirenone because it is molecularly very similar. It's derived from spironolactone, so it's very different molecularly from any other progestin. So a lot of times, if your body, it doesn't recognize that as a threat. It's like, all right, this one's cool. So it also like it does really good for bloating. And we use it a lot of times for women who have PMDD and PMS. So that in and of itself is great in menopause to use drospirenone. The brand name is called Slind, and then maybe add like an estrogen patch on top of that. I think probably the newest option is there's a medication called Duave. In the UK, it's called Duaviv. I just learned that the other day. I was like, why do we have to do that? Why can't we just have the same names? But whatever. And that's a combination of equine estrogen plus something called a SERM. So a SERM is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, which basically means in some tissues, in some places of the body, it's kind of pro-estrogen. In other places of the body, it acts like anti-estrogen. So with a SERM, this one specifically is called basodoxifene. That's in this medication. And it's like has anti-estrogenic effects on the uterus. So it doesn't let it grow out of control. So that's a really nice option because, again, there's no progestin in it. It's a totally different class of medication. It is a pill you have to take by mouth. And then, of course, some people don't really want to, take equine estrogen, which is understandable. I wish my dream is they like make the basodoxifene by itself or like mix it with estradiol or something, but maybe someday. And then I would say you're going nuclear option if we're like nothing works, which I have not encountered this, but you could technically get a hysterectomy if you're like, my symptoms are so bad, I need estrogen, I cannot tolerate progestin. I haven't personally run into that though. You know,
Never made it
I
that far.
no, I wouldn't say just go willy-nilly getting hysterectomies. There's always pros and cons to everything, but hey, like if it was that bad and you cannot get anything to work, it's an option.
Understandable. Absolutely. So many different things to try with progesterone, and it sounds like, in your experience, there's always a good match for every person. It does just take a little bit of patience and trial and error. We did have a question about IUD. Let's see. Okay. If you have an IUD and don't know your cycle, how would you recommend cycling progesterone? Is it better to do 12 days on, 12 days off, or would every other day be okay?
So if you have an IUD anyway, and tell me if I'm interpreting this question wrong, you don't have to add any progesterone on top of it. Like you already have the progestin in your body from the IUD. However, that being said, the progestin in the IUD is very good, again, for protecting the uterus,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really have the nice effects of bioidentical progesterone where it like helps with sleep or mood. So if that's something you're looking to add, you can then add on oral progesterone on top of that. And honestly, if it's something that you like and it works, I would take it every day because I would say, why would you only want to have good sleep for 12 days of the month when you can have good sleep for all the days of the month? But yeah, tell me if that wasn't exactly what the question was, let me know. But there's some debate over cycling, not cycling. I, I rarely cycle again, because my point is if it's a medication that, if it's progesterone and you tolerate it and you like it, just take it every day, make things easy. But if that is a situation where if it's someone that, again, doesn't tolerate the progesterone all that much, but it's still doable where you could just be like, all right, I'll just take it half of the month. Still have a uterine protection, but not be dealing with this every day. But for the most part, I just make it easy, do it every day.
Sure. And there's no concern if they were to take days off about estrogen being unopposed and getting aggressive.
Getting all aggressive. It's no, as long as like you're monitored by some, like there's certain doses, like for instance, bioidentical progesterone, I would want them on a minimum of 200 milligrams if they're cycling and not taking it every day. So there might be a slight difference in dosing, that type of thing, but it is definitely doable.
Interesting. That's so good to know.
Yeah.
So lots of different options available, including oral and patch for those who like to have that transdermal application. How many days do most patches remain on the skin?
That's a good question. Um, and I would like to, I have to look into this. I don't know why I'm always yelling from the rooftops like transdermal progesterone, it doesn't work. When it's in cream form, it barely works. I don't know what they do to the patches specifically that you can absorb it and it works, but that's like the one time where it's okay to do a transdermal progestin and it will get absorbed and protect your uterus. But like the compounded progesterone creams, wild yam creams, they are not they are not doing what they say they're doing. But anywho, patches usually come in either a once a week patch or a twice a week patch. I prefer the twice a week patches. I think they stay on better. I just had a patient actually the other day. She messaged me. She was like, "Can I switch to once a week? I don't feel like doing this twice a week." I was like, "Sure." And then she messaged me back and she was like, "This thing's peeling off by the end of the week, and it's a lot bigger." And I go back and I was like, "Sure." You don't know until you try,
Yep.
but in general, those are the options, and that is why I tend to do the twice a week guy, so that you get that chance to reapply, start over halfway through the week, and they're a little smaller, which is nice.
It gives the skin immediately under that adhesive a little breathing room and a little break too, because you can slide over about an inch and give that exact spot a little break, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And people use different tricks and things in that. I mean, I have people that they'll get like Tegaderm and put that over top of the patch. To me, if I have to go that far, I'm like, this is too much work. But if you really want to use your patch and that's what helps it stay on, go for it. If you've got like mild adhesive allergies, you can do like a little spray of Flonase on your skin, let that dry, and then put the patch on, and that helps with any itchies from the patch. So,
Flonase.
yeah, I know.
Saline
But
spray to.
it's not just saline. What is it? I'm getting my nasals, not mometasone. There's some kind of steroid in there, but just a little boop,
Oh, brilliant.
little anti-inflammatory action for you there.
Love it. That's fantastic. Is there anything else that you would like people to know about the chaperone hormone, currently known as progesterone?
Also known as progesterone. I just think in general, I'm interested to find. I think I've said this before. I feel like progesterone's like the ugly stepsister. Like everybody's like estrogen, estrogen, and then we kind of forget about progesterone. But we've got so many receptors in different places. I mean, there's even some research about progesterone receptors on the vulva. You know, it's in the brain, this and that. So I think, again, it's going to be one of those things that the more we learn, we're like, oh, it's important for more than just, our reproduction. Because most hormones that we call sex hormones are not specifically just for sex organs. They do so much more. So hopefully somebody smart will do research. Not I.
And speaking about cognitive function, as we did with estrogen last time when we were talking about different rates of onset of dementia after perimenopause and menopause and how protective hormone therapy can be over those things. We got another question. If the patch peels at the corners, should I be worried about not getting the right dose?
If you can't get it to just like stick back on, if it, potentially, I would try like it if it's a once in a while thing. Again, none of this is like a huge deal in the fact of like something bad. It's not like, oh God, we're trying to monitor, keep your blood pressure at a certain level. It's basically like your symptoms and obviously protecting your bones. If you're starting to notice that like symptoms are coming back that you didn't used to have, then like absolutely. A little teeny rolling at the edge is not terrible, but in general, I would like to see a patch that's going to stay in and stay nicely. So if that's like an ongoing thing, you can like alcohol your skin first and let it dry really well. But some people, for whatever reason, patches just don't like to stick to their skin. And you could do like a gel instead if that becomes an issue.
Perfect. We always prep the skin with alcohol when we're applying tape and different modalities in physical therapy land. So,
Yeah,
and I always tell people different people have different pHs of their skin and different levels of oil production that can get in the way of adhesive sometimes as well. So just prepping it a little bit
absolutely.
can help it stay on and do its job.
Yep, and it depends too. You've got people like that love to swim for exercise, or they've got their hot tub and they're all, they're like in water constantly, It might work for them, it might not, but it's very individual depending on each person's way of life, I guess you could say.
That's different activities, different strokes.
Different strokes for different folks. No swimming for me, thank you. I can barely doggy paddle. Very panicky.
Don't worry. There's always going to be some sort of flotation device nearby. Somebody will rescue you. You could stay clear of the edge of the pool.
Yes, I like my floaties. They make me feel safe.
Well, thank you so much for your time and expertise, Andrea. It's always so good to see you.
You too.
And
I gotta get better lighting. Your face looks nice and bright. I'm in front of a window, but it looks dark and depressing on my end. So.
No, you look well lit and stunning as always.
Well, that's me.
We will be back in 2 weeks, back on our Thursday time slot on, I believe, January 9 plus 7. I don't know, like around January 14th. And we will be discussing another matter in hormone therapy to be announced. And I will look forward to seeing you then.
Me too. It is a pleasure as always.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.